Hey everybody, welcome back. We're the Benchwarmers, your bi-weekly look at the world of Jews and sports. Gabe, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Boker Tov, everyone listening. If you're listening in the morning, I'm doing great. My child is bouncy. I'm enjoying the weather. Happy birthday this week to James, our co-host, who is
Thank you.
turning 23.
It's actually not for like another 2 weeks, but I'm turning 32, so you got that backwards. Have you recovered from the 18 holes of golf we played yesterday?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm a little sore, but I'm doing
Yeah.
good.
I
It was a
definitely
lot.
had that moment yesterday of like after I was home and showered and like sat down on the couch like watching some TV and like that I got up for the first time like after sitting for an hour and it was like, oh
Yeah.
no.
No, I think as we age and your birthday is a good way to, time this. Is just like everything is getting a little harder.
Yes, everything is getting a little harder.
You need more
except
stretching.
except for my swing speed, which is just getting slower and slower.
Do you think you've started to make a lot of old man noises? I feel like as an old Jewish man or an aspiring old Jewish man, just sort of like the grunts and the groans enter
Yeah.
my life more.
Just
like
grunts and groans and demands for whitefish.
I saw a TikTok the other day. There's a TikTok that's old Jewish men. That's the whole TikTok. And it was a guy holding a sign that says, "Make locks $1.99 a pound." Just going, come on, do it. Do it. Come on.
That's very funny. So let's go through some news in the Jewish sporting world. We should say that we have an exciting interview coming up with Emily Burak of Alma magazine, who's been profiling a ton of Jewish Olympians in the upcoming Tokyo Games.
And we get into that as it is now. I suppose it is the week of the games of the 26th Olympiad.
Yeah. And, there's been some Jews that we've already focused on. We had an interview. We've interviewed some of the Team Israel baseball members. We interviewed Ellie Schenkel, who's one of the fencers for Team Canada. And, there's some other Canadian Jews who will profile as well here and there.
We've talked at length about, a lot of non-Canadian Jews. We always give a shout out to our Jessica Fox, who we love from Australia. We talk about her in the interview. As we've called her before, the goat who worth much more than two Zuzim, Sue Bird, who we talk about also at length in this interview with Emily. It's a very exciting time for international Jewry. But the Olympics aren't the only thing happening this week.
Yeah. So what else has been going on?
Sports. The third Hughes brother is about to be drafted in the NHL draft on Friday night.
Oh, wow.
At the same time that there are, Jews of the summer games, some of the Jews of the winter games, some frozen chosen, continue to add to the first Jewish family of the NHL, the Hughes, Jack and Quinn. Their younger brother, Luke, is likely to be drafted on Friday in the first or second round.
Oh, that's very exciting. Where's he from? Has he played like major junior hockey? Does he play U.S. college?
He plays the U.S. Under 18 team. And goes to their specialized high school, like the Mighty Ducks.
That's a thing.
That's what the Mighty Ducks 2, I believe, was about.
Oh, wow.
It is. And he's scheduled to go to Michigan in the fall if he does not make an NHL team.
Is there a lot of benefit to not signing as a rookie? Like if you're a drafted rookie in the NHL, is it just like, I want to go to college?
I think it's, I want to go to college. I think the NHL gives you 3 years of post-draft eligibility. Like you have 3 years of exclusive negotiating.
Oh, okay. So can you get drafted and then just go to college and then play for college in 2 years and then come to the team that drafted you?
Absolutely.
I see. That makes a lot of sense because, baseball does it a different way where basically like you can pick a high schooler. You can pick a high schooler first overall in the draft, anytime you want. And the high schooler can just say, no, I'm good. I'm going to go to this university that I want to go to. And you get compensation for it. Like you get a draft pick in the following year, but it can really throw a monkey wrench in your plans.
No, yeah. Leave it to a Jewish sports podcast to discuss the legal ramifications instead of the sports themselves. But every sport is a different one. And yes, hockey sort of having exclusive negotiating rights for an extended period, I think has a lot to do with sort of the perhaps less player and less, individual rights focused part of the league.
Right.
Still at a league growth and expansion of team growth. I think that's sort of something that's part of it as they've been adding so many teams over the last 35 years, right? I guess it's only been now 50 years since the league was only 6 teams. And now it's 32.
Let's stick with the topic of draft picks and go on to talk about Jacob Steinmetz, who is as far as anyone knows, the first Orthodox Jewish player to ever be drafted by a Major League Baseball team. He was picked 77th overall in the third round of the June entry draft by the Arizona Diamondbacks. He
was drafted. Steinmetz, I believe, was drafted by the Arizona Diamondbacks. You're absolutely right. Sorry to say.
Okay. He's a 17-year-old kid from Nassau County, of course. His dad is Elliot Steinmetz, who is the head coach of the undefeated over the last 2 years Yeshiva University Maccabees basketball team.
It's amazing. His Twitter
what a
bio,
sports family.
Elliot Steinmetz. What a story. His you Google him, his LinkedIn lists both his NCAA coaching and the law firm where he also works at.
Yeah. So at only 17, he's I think he's already 6'5". He throws low 90s, right? He's a righty. So there's a lot to work with.
Got a real chance.
Absolutely. I mean, I think when they're using a draft pick on a third rounder, it's because they think he's a live arm who can pitch long innings in the major leagues. He's 17, so realistically, he's someone we're going to keep an eye on, but he might not be playing in the big leagues for 5. Like if he's not in the big leagues for 5-6 years, that's totally normal,
And not on Saturdays. He has not pitched on Saturdays previously, and he says he will not pitch on Shabbat no matter how far he gets.
No, he has. Steinmetz has pitched on Saturdays.
Oh,
but he won't ride on buses and things like that.
He won't ride on buses.
The other Orthodox selection, Ellie Klugman, who's out of Vegas, I think, was picked in the 593rd overall a little bit later. And Klugman is on the Israel baseball team that's going to be going to Tokyo.
He's been playing as the catcher in some games.
And he will not pitch on Saturdays or on Shabbat at all.
Not catch on Saturdays.
Yeah. So,
we had the first Orthodox Jew drafted in the major leagues, and then a couple of days later, the second.
Exactly. And, as the 593rd pick, we're talking a little bit later in the draft. It's more of a flyer on someone.
I wish they would have waited to 613 just for the natural feeling.
So, again, someone we'll keep an eye on, but Klugman probably more of a longer road to get to the majors, but definitely lots of room for development there. These kids are so young that it's so weird that Major League Baseball teams have to take such there's so much built up on like the fate of a 17-year-old kid and how he develops in your system. So, obviously we wish them both a lot of luck. We've tweeted about other Jewish draft picks. It's impossible to know exactly who everyone is who's Jewish. We've got
a few good Mike Jacobs All-Stars coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
In the draft.
Yeah, I know. There's one in the hockey draft there's a kid from Sweden named Isaac Rosen, who is somehow, as far as I can tell, not Jewish. And it's like, I can't believe that there's someone named that who's not Jewish.
I mean, we've talked about, there's a Jewish hockey player we've talked about before, Jacob Silverberg, who's also Swedish. And there's sort of the same way you have that corn-fed German, Jaden Schwartz from Middle Canada. You can get your Jacob Silverberg or Isaac Rosen from Scandinavia.
Yeah. And, let's move on to the next story. We'll tie it all together. We've been talking about draft picks. Gabe, do you know who the first Israeli draft pick in NBA history was?
I believe it's someone who I've been told I've looked like, and maybe an anti-Semitic comment. I believe it is Omri Caspi.
That's right. Omri Caspi was the first ever Israeli player to be drafted in the NBA. He was drafted 23rd overall in 2009 by the Sacramento Kings. He's now 33 years old, and he has decided to hang it up. He is retiring, announced his retirement from professional basketball. And, definitely someone who we've talked about before, had a solid career in the NBA, played most of 10 seasons in the NBA. He won a ring or two. He did. So he won a ring. He got a ring when he was with Golden State. He was with them for the 2017-2018 season, which I think that was the second Durant year. Yeah.
Yes.
Where they won. And, but he was cut before the playoffs because he was injured and they needed room on the playoff roster. So he still got a ring as a guy who was, on the team when they won that year, but wasn't playing games in the NBA finals.
Gotcha. He played with LeBron for a few years on Cleveland as well.
Yeah, I think so.
He's got a lot of exposure to a lot of great players and had a lot of good years of his career.
Yeah, wasn't a guy who necessarily dominated the floor, but shot the ball pretty well, from three, played okay defense. And, I think was a guy that the teams really liked. I know when I was looking into this, there was a quote from Steve Kerr where, he said, they loved him and what he brought to the team. It was a guy who's difficult to cut. So definitely a glue guy for a lot of teams.
And paved the way for, at least in the men's game. In the women's game, we've had Sue Bird be, a Jewish basketball star, but Caspi paved the way for Denny Avdija, who we've talked about, at length in Washington now.
Yeah.
It's
Omri ended his career the last couple of years with Maccabi Tel Aviv, but he's hanging it up now. So, we wish him luck with whatever endeavors he has in the future. I can only imagine he will be in some, Israel basketball ambassadorship role, continuing to further the game in Israel and working on that in his future, or maybe in the NBA as well. And if he wants to coach or work in some capacity in the NBA, that's something we could see as well. But L'chaim to
L'chaim, exactly.
To Omri,
Mazel tov to Omri.
Mazel tov on your retirement. Mazel tov on your retirement. You're only 33. You got lots of life ahead of you. Lots to do. So we'll keep an eye out on what Omri is doing next.
Absolutely. So one other thing I wanted to talk about, something we've been thinking about, now that we've gone on the news.
Sure.
I was inspired by a tweet from one of our listeners that I'm curious about. Jews are there's a lot of Jews that are familiar with the concept of Jewish geography, which I don't need to explain at length, but I'll say, how do you say, oh, do you know this person? Do you know that person? I can say, we played it a little bit with Emily in the interview you're going to hear up later on, but I could say, Jamie, do you know this person? And he'd go, oh yeah, the cousin of so-and-so and the friend of so-and-so. Is Jewish geography a sport? Could you get two people together? You have your third sort of, how fast can you get to, let's say, Alicia Clark of the Seattle Storm? How fast can we get through Jewish geography to Alicia Clark? And then the fewest sort of Jewish person who went to camp with this person who knows that person would win. Right. Is that a competitive Jewish sport?
I'm going to say it's not a sport. I'm going to make a ruling here. I'm going to say it's in the category of parlor games. So in the same way that I don't think we necessarily consider canasta a sport or bridge necessarily a sport.
I don't know. People
Mahjong,
think bridge.
These are sort of on the spectrum of competitive thinking things, but not the most physical.
Have you seen a group of men with a tin of herring and a game of clapperjass going on? That's about as competitive as it gets.
Yeah, I would put this in the same ballpark as clapperjass, a clubbyitch, as most people call it.
Yes, exactly.
And say it's not quite a sport; it's a competitive thing. Certainly, people have made a competition out of playing Jewish geography and finding the connection with other people, and that's a thing. But I would say not quite a sport.
I wonder if there's a Jewish geography game that goes on in when they make trades in the Israeli basketball league, do they play Jewish geography in order to determine how to trade this guy? It's
the equipment manager. You know the equipment manager. He's married to that guy who used to date your cousin.
Exactly.
All that stuff.
And that's how we've traded. The Maccabi Tel Aviv calls up Hapoel Tel Aviv or Maccabi Haifa and says, oh, we've traded Omri Caspi for the equipment manager's wife's brother, who went to university with the point guard. We've traded for both of them. I'm sure
it happens here and there. You never know. Sometimes people get traded for a bag of balls. I mean, in all leagues, or plane fare and a pack of cigarettes. These things have happened.
I used to work with a guy. This is back in a media day who came up with a bit, and I'm stealing his bit here, but I'll tell you the bit that every year at in the NHL trade deadline, there was some Bulgarian hockey player whose name was Bagov Pucks, Bagov Puchs. And let's pretend for the sake of this bit that Bagov Pucks is Jewish. And every time he would think, they'd hear his name, oh, they're trading him for a bag of pucks, or he really getting picked up for a bag of pucks. Some guy is sitting watching on his old TV screen in an arena in Bucharest going, Bagov going to NHL.
It's very good. Very, very clever. Before we move on to our interview with Emily, just tie a knot on the end of what we talked about last time on our podcast. Denis Shapovalov's trip to Wimbledon, unfortunately, came to an end in the semifinals. Very impressive for him to make it that far, but he got defeated by the juggernaut that is Novak Djokovic in straight sets. All of which went to 7 points, but 7 games.
This episode has a lot of good Djokovic hate.
Yeah, we talked about it with Emily a little bit too. He rubs everybody the wrong way, I think. I don't know who his fans are. I guess Serbs.
Yes,
which
I
is
think
understandable. But I think
Serbian people and I guess the gluten-free.
I don't even think
He
I
makes a
think
big deal of being gluten-free, but
Serbs and anti-vaxxers and like that's it. He's
yes.
like, a crazy robot, and I don't think even like tennis enthusiasts like him, right? Like not like the way like
No.
people like Federer or like
Yeah, I don't
Nadal's
think he has that
artistry or
same
whatever.
sort of magic as the two of them. He's just a brutal machine.
Yeah. Should say as well, Jewish American golfer Daniel Berger had a top 10 at the British Open. So nice end to the major season for Daniel Berger.
Great for him. A great year for Berger. He's probably higher ranked than any Jewish golfer ever has been as of now.
Yeah, he's currently 18. He's been as high as 12 this year. He started the year extremely strong, but he's had a top 10 at the U.S. Open and top 10 now at the Open Championship. So definitely two, pretty good results. He had top 10 at the Players after winning the AT&T earlier this year. So, still some meat left on the bone in this season. Obviously, there's some, a lot of money
FedEx
at stake,
Cup still to go on.
Cup. Yeah, no one, I don't really, does anyone really care about it? I don't know, the championship maybe.
Probably not, unless they win. I'm sure Daniel Berger, if you're listening, we are not at all disparaging the joy of the FedEx Cup, and we hope you win it greatly. Yes. But we probably would have been more excited if you won the Masters.
Right. That's true. But wish him well and continued success this year. He's still a young guy. He's going to build on this and maybe compete for a major soon.
He's great. I'm sure he will. Anyone in the top 20 is really, or top 50 even, can win any week. And we're just hoping it all comes together with him on a major week. And Daniel Berger, you've got our cheers.
Yeah.
If you are indeed listening.
So let's move on now to our interview with Emily Barak. We're joined now by Emily Barak of HeyAlma.com. Hi, Emily. How's it going?
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, about Hey Alma, and about what you're doing there?
Sure. I'm Alma's deputy managing editor. I've been at Alma for the last over 3.5 years. I was a freelancer before then. Alma is a Jewish culture site that originally launched as a publication for women, but sort of realized we don't need gendered language anymore and dropped that about 2 years ago. And now we are a site for all, which I love. And in the past couple of weeks, we've been really talking a lot about Jewish Olympians over at Alma, which has been something I've been super excited about as a longtime sports fan and always pushing for more sports coverage on Alma.
That feels like a really natural intersection with us. We are the Jewish Sports Podcast. For our listeners who obviously can't see right now, Emily is wearing a Sue Bird t-shirt celebrating her Olympic medals, and we're all sort of, Jamie and I, we live in Canada. We're Canadian. We are obviously want Sue Bird to win as many medals as she possibly can. However, we might hope Canada wins this year. I mean, I do hope Canada wins this year. We are almost as good. If there's any team who can do it. But if America has to win, I'm glad that Sue is leading the team.
Yes. They had a tune-up game right before they left against the WNBA All-Stars that they obviously lost, which was surprising for many. Not that surprising, I guess.
But that's a little bit like the Spider-Man meme of like pointing at the same person, like the WNBA All-Stars and the U.S. women's national basketball team.
Exactly. Not a big difference between the two.
So Emily, you've been doing a series for Alma on different Jewish Olympians. It's 18 Things to Know, I think, is the moniker, and I know Alma does it for non-sports people as well. But just sort of trying to highlight these people, sort of who to know in advance of the Olympics, and also I should mention you wrote an article for Jewish Telegraph as well. Just sort of highlighting some Olympians to watch out for. Are there any ones that you've been, people you've been surprised to find out are Jewish, or interesting stories that you've come across in your research?
Yeah, actually most of the Olympians and Paralympians I've written about in the past month or so, I had never heard of before this moment. As I'm sure you two are familiar with, the quest to discover whether or not an athlete is Jewish often leads you down multiple Wikipedia wormholes and tagged Instagram photos. And I've sort of like perfected it to a science over my years at Alma, and trying to discover whether or not a celebrity is Jewish. It's a very, very transferable skill to athletes. But going into writing about it, I knew only 3 of the, I think, 15 or 20 we ended up covering, which is Diego Schwartzman, who is the love of my life. He does not know it. He is my favorite Jewish athlete out there, and Sue Bird and Aslan Karatsev, who doesn't exactly identify as Jewish, but he was raised in Israel. He's a tennis player, raised in Israel, speaks fluent Hebrew. Had a great story at the Australian Open this year. And so we're sort of writing about him, but not really identifying him as Jewish, but sort of saying like he has some connections, so we could talk about him.
It's funny when he had that run at the Australian Open, I can't remember who he beat, if it was Diego or Shapovalov, but Denis Shapovalov and Diego Schwartzman were gonna meet in one of the brackets, except that one of them was upset by Karatsev. And we were so excited.
We're both.
They've both been, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we were so excited on this, like, this matchup of Shapovalov and Schwartzman, like the two top 10 Jews. And then it turned out that they were also playing Karatsev, who was Jewish, who no one knew about. No one knew who this guy was.
I know. I wrote about Diego's upset, actually, because I covered Diego as much as I possibly can. And I covered Karatsev being like, this guy upset him without even like noting the Jewishness. And then it came out, of course, a few days later. But Shapovalov really doesn't identify as Jewish. So we don't. We don't touch him.
We've talked about Chapo a lot on our show.
Yeah.
He wears both a crucifix and a Magen David every day.
So interesting.
It's fascinating.
He's born in Tel Aviv,
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, it's all interesting. But with the other athletes, I think where I started was, shout out my coworker, Evelyn, and we sort of just combed through the list of Team USA and Team Australia, like basically where you start where you think there are Jews in the world. You start looking at the names, you start Googling, you get further from there. The most exciting athlete I think I wrote about was Avi Schafer, who is making his Olympics debut with the Japan basketball team.
Right, so he's the son of I think an American Jew and a Japanese woman.
His mom is Japanese, his dad is Jewish American. He was born and raised in Japan, and he went to the States to play basketball his senior year. He didn't play basketball until he was 16 years old, which is wild. He's 23 now. He went to the States to play basketball senior year, got recruited, played basketball a season, I think, in Georgia, and then decided to go pro in Japan with the eyes on the national team and these Olympics. And he made the team. I had actually written the article. I'm very superstitious, but I had written the article before the Japanese basketball roster was announced. And because he'd been on the roster a while, it was
but he was sort of on the
guarantee
bubble
that he was going to make it, but it was not like 100% definite. And I got so nervous because I had written the article that he was not going to make it. And my coworkers kept being like, that's not how it works. I'm like, but in my brain, I just jinxed him and now he's not going to make the team and we're not going to be able to talk about him. So he was definitely the most interesting discovery, because I think when you think about Japan's like hometown Olympics, you don't necessarily think of Jewish athletes.
Sure.
But there's a lot of Jewish athletes in all shapes and sizes.
I mean, between the, dozens of Japanese Jews, it's amazing that one of them is 6'10" and playing in the Olympics.
10, it's beyond.
Well, to me, that's what's so exciting about the Olympics, and to at least from a Jewish perspective, and to a smaller extent, the Maccabi Games, is it takes this diaspora of both Jews and athletes all over the world and brings them all to one place. And one thing we often ask of Jewish athletes is, do you have relationships with any other ones? And we, it's always really cool. We've spoken to a Jewish NHL player, Nathan Thompson, who told us that other Jews have started to reach out to him in the league after he converted. And he sees that you can sort of get this international family and brotherhood, sisterhood, I should say, siblinghood, all coming together around the world. And that's super exciting to me about the Olympics. I'm hoping that Diego and Karatsev say something to each other in Hebrew.
Oh man, yeah. I have a lot of issues with the Olympics, which we don't need to dive into here. But I think one great thing about them is that they introduce us to all these characters and player characters, all these real people, these athletes who would not be spotlighted elsewhere, who would not be highlighted, who would not get media coverage, particularly women athletes and Paralympians and Paralympic athletes. Who don't get mainstream media coverage, who don't, we all know about, Diego Schwartzman. All of us in the Jewish media world know about Diego Schwartzman, but we don't know about like Jemima Montag, who's this like race walker from Australia, who is very, very cool. I'm very obsessed with her now. And I think that is one of the only lasting positive impacts of the Olympics, is to highlight these types of athletes and to sort of give them the platform that they have long deserved and really don't get. I agree.
I do agree with you. It's almost like, the Olympics is so terrible, except for the good things about it.
Terrible.
And it's just like for 2.5 weeks every 4 years or every 2 years with the Winter Olympics, I just sort of turn my brain off to the bad things and just enjoy the human stories, right?
That's what they count on. This is a whole nother conversation, but that's what the IOC counts on, is our affection for Olympians and our affection for these stories, and they keep getting away with all their terribleness. So
we talked about both of us, all of us have had the experience of like really doing the deep dive on someone's Instagram and family members' Twitter pages and things like that to find out who's Jewish. I know someone that there was another article on Alma that profiled a Canadian trampolinist who I didn't know was Jewish. His name is Samantha Smith, and it's like, how do you go from that name to assuming they're Jewish? Someone I think said the same thing about Ty Kelly, who plays for the Israel national baseball team, who's an American Jew, and it's like, his name's Ty Kelly. Like, how Irish can you get? And yet he's Jewish. So is there a process you have? Have people been have been forwarding you information about, here's a hot tip, so and so?
We get a lot of emails from so and so's uncle or so and so's friend who says you should look into this person.
I think one thing I've learned is to really check my biases at the door when I'm like thinking about Jewish athletes. Like when I first joined the Jewish media world, I think it was more like Ashkenazi names I was more familiar with, or people that looked more like me would more indicate to me that they were Jewish. And I soon realized like that is absolutely not what I should be going off on. Jews do not all look one way, nor do they have names that are, Stein or Witz or whatever you want to indicate them as. So for me, it was where I start is like local Jewish coverage, like the Australian Jewish News, or like other like local papers are fantastic at spotlighting their own local athletes, and they often have the best knowledge of their community. And then really just like cross-referencing as many, like Wikipedia is pretty good at, I'm sure you two are familiar with this, like categorizing like Jewish athletes or like Jews in tennis or, whatever their subcategories are.
Right.
So making sure you're really exhaustive of like clicking through all of those people. And then it's a question of like searching social media. Like I search their Twitters for like keywords, or I scroll way back on their Instagram to see,
looking for that one menorah photo.
Did they post about Hanukkah? Yeah, exactly. And
I do the same thing. I always
people you miss, but
I always try and find something around December, and then it's like, well, is there a Christmas celebration photo, or the lack of one? Is the lack of one telling sometimes?
Are they saying happy holidays, or what are they? What is their message to their fans? But I have, since all the articles have come out, I've definitely gotten a lot of DMs on Instagram being like, why haven't you written about this person? I never said I was going to write about all the Jewish Olympians, but I tried to, do a nice representative group of them.
Oh, right. We know that. And something we're trying to do on our show is sort of explain the Jewish history of sports that people might not be aware of. For example, most of the history of North American fencing, I know you looked at a Jewish fencer who's American, was sort of brought by Russian Jews to America in the 20th century, which, things you don't know, the international community of Jews carries these sports around the world.
Totally. At fencing, I did not realize is the most Jewish sport. Like it blew my mind. And Mike, we were having a amongst my coworkers, we were talking like, what do you think the most Jewish sport at the Olympics is? And which one has the most Jews or whatnot? People are saying judo because of Israel's dominance in judo over the years. But I think fencing. I think there's a lot of Jewish fencers. The long history of Jewish fencers. I don't think I've ever watched a fencing match though. So
there's a lot of screaming, which is
it's sort of like 15 seconds of fury, and then like a light goes off, and you have to figure out what happened.
Interesting.
It's good. It's one of those sports that like instant replay is great for. Is really
yeah.
But
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I would say the least Jewish sport at the upcoming Olympics is U.S. women's soccer. I'm just so disappointed there is no Jewish angle into their story or women's soccer in general.
Yael Averbuck is on maternity leave, and that's and Abby Delkemper's fiance is a Jewish soccer player,
and Megan Rapinoe's wife is of course,
and Megan Rapinoe's fiance.
Fiance, sorry,
exactly. But
that's the closest Jewish
athlete in the team.
No, I've Googled many a time. Trust me.
Well, I mean, believe it or not, one would also say there's a great Jewish history of rugby too. In the U.S., just lost its only Jewish rugby player, Nate Ebner, who's skipping the Olympics to the sad delight of contact sport loving Jews, or the opposite of delight, the chagrin.
Yeah.
So Emily, I guess I have a question, and as part of it's talks about the whole point of our podcast in the first place. But what's the appeal of knowing who the Jews are? What do you think is the interest in that? Because I know you're writing from a personal perspective. You're interested in this, and hopefully I think and your readers are as well in knowing who the Jewish athletes are. And I guess the question is, well, what is elevated by that? What is helped by that? What does it give you?
Sure. I think there is that joy of when you're watching something and you're like, are they Jewish? Is that name Jewish? Is that mom they flashed to in the crowd? Could she be a Jewish mom? And you look it up on your phone, you Google, you maybe end up on Alma, maybe you end up on the personal life section of their Wikipedia page, and they're Jewish. And you feel an immediate connection with this athlete, even if they're from around the world. I instinctively start rooting for whoever the Jewish athlete is. I'm sure listeners of this podcast very much relate to that. And I think with athletes like Diego Schwartzman in particular, like he looks like someone I could have gone to summer camp with, like I could have grown up with. And there's something very like familial about that, even though I've never met Diego Schwartzman in my life. I will probably never meet him. I'm not from Argentina. No one in my family is, but I think there's something that there's an immediate connection to someone, even if there's no seeming connection. The fact that they're Jewish, I think my editor and I talk about this a lot. Of there's a stereotype of Jews, maybe not being the most athletic, or maybe not, succeeding in sports in the same way. In other ways, Jews succeed. And there's something very cool of being like, hey, no, look at Sue Bird. She's one of the greatest women's basketball players of all time. And she's Jewish. Like, that's remarkable. I think there's something that our own internal stereotypes to knock down and to rethink when we talk about these Jewish athletes.
So when you find out someone, wins the Nobel Prize for economics is Jewish, it's like, also a sense of pride, but more of a sense of like, well, of course,
exactly. And I'm not to diminish Jews in any other thing, but I feel like when you discover an athlete is Jewish, there's a bit of shock there that shouldn't be there, because we know Jews are all different types of people, but it's still there. And I think that's true for many people. And I wish it wasn't, but that is the world we're living in.
I think so. And I think it's, to build on what you said a little bit, there's, professional athletes, and what makes the Olympics so compelling is that, these strangers could be regular people. They're not making a ton of money. They're not those you see, on primetime TV. They're more often than not some person with a day job who is chasing their dream. And that makes us identify with them. And I feel very much you get the same connection with Jewish athletes that, like you said, Diego is someone you could have gone to summer camp with. It's a very similar feeling to know that you have something in common with somebody who is so incredible at what they do in an amazing way.
Yes.
And I think also, especially in the context of sports, there's a feeling of like, well, sometimes, and especially with the Olympics, things are broken down in terms of nationality, and sure, you can root for your country's team, your country's participant, but sometimes your country is not good at cross country skiing or power lifting or something like that. And it's like, if you're a Jewish sports fan and you want to know who to root for, or you need to break a tie on who to root for, then finding out someone's Jewish is a great reason to want to cheer for them.
Also, as someone who does not feel particularly patriotic for a multitude of reasons, and I often just focus on individual athletes over I'm just going to blindly root for anyone at Team USA. I think it's easy. Yeah,
it's almost like it's if the Olympics were started now instead of 120 odd years ago, like one wonders if they would be organizing things by nation. It's such like an archaic way of doing things, and I always get I similarly have conflicted feelings about patriotism.
Let's organize it by religion. That'll be less problematic.
But
I agree. There's no better way to do it, unfortunately.
I think the big tournaments I watch outside of the Olympics are tennis tournaments. And of course they compete under their flag, but you're really rooting for like Naomi Osaka. You're not like, I'm cheering on Japan because I'm rooting for Naomi, right? Like you're just rooting for her. And I think if the Olympics pivot less from nationalism and more towards like these athletes and their stories, like Before the better, probably.
So it looks like Diego is participating in the Olympics.
He is.
I think it's his first one, right?
His first games. He's seeded number 9. Most top tennis players have actually dropped out of the tournament because there's no fans, and it doesn't actually help you in your ranking either for the men's or women's. There's no like points from playing the Olympic tournament. It's only for glory. But for a lot of them, it's a big deal. And actually, Djokovic is going for his like golden slam, which has only been achieved once.
That robot, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I root against. I guess I would say I always root against Djokovic, no matter who he's playing.
I think we can always agree on that. Somehow, COVID managed to make him stronger, which also he's my least. I guess I'm always rooting against Djokovic. That's my one true allegiance.
I feel like he resembles like the number 2 Bond villain in a movie.
He gives me like real villain vibes. Whenever he plays, but this is about Jewish athletes. We don't need to talk about him. I'm trying to think of other Jewish athletes I was very excited to learn about.
Well, Jessica Fox, the canoeist from Australia, I think is a real medal potential.
Yeah, she actually is the daughter of 2 Olympians.
Exactly,
her mom, Miriam Jerusalem. I'm going to mispronounce her last name.
Yerushalmi,
she won bronze in canoe slalom, and for many years, men got to compete in 2 types of canoe racing or kayak racing, and women only got 1. And this is the first year that women will be able to compete in both events, which is fantastic. So Jessica Fox actually has the opportunity to medal not once but twice for the first time.
Yeah, and then exciting. I think Alex Kleiman, the beach volleyball player, is part of a twosome that has a real chance as well.
Yes, they're ranked number 2. She's beach volleyball. She's also another very tall Jew, along with Avi Schafer, and she is ranked number 2 in the world. So, and she only started playing beach volleyball in 2017. She had played indoor volleyball for a decade before that.
This is getting a little Jewish geography here, but Canada had a all Jewish beach volleyball team at the last Olympics.
Oh wow!
And Rio and London, Binstock and Schachter were the names. Where I've been obviously in there, from Toronto, and they were the beach volleyball team. So I bet you there's a Jewish beach volleyball history in there somewhere too.
Yeah, that article's waiting to be written. The secret Jewish history of beach volleyball.
The other one I'd like to highlight, and I someone you haven't mentioned, but we've kept an eye on her because she's Canadian, but Sharon Fitchman, who's going to be representing Canada for the women's doubles tennis. Definitely someone to watch out for. And, I think like has a good chance to medal just because, tennis is weird. I feel like any of the tournament ones.
Weird. Yeah.
No, but it's like the guys who made it to the final, the guy who made it to the finals and semifinals in Wimbledon, like some of these guys were not, they weren't the best in the world. They just, you got Federer on a bad day and
totally
make it through. So
totally. The other 2 I want to talk about is, Maru Tafiri, also my apologies for terrible pronunciation. He's an Israeli marathon runner, and he ran in the 2016 Olympics, but him and his wife Salam will be the first married couple to represent Israel at the Olympics.
Right, very cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
it is extremely cool.
Very athletic couple.
And it's funny how you see, the marathon is another sport. Jews aren't particularly known for endurance sports, let alone, sports in general. And I say this as a second stereotype, but unfortunately it's true, is we see a lot of Jewish people as sort of the big, strong baseball player or boxer, not necessarily a lean, mean grinder like this couple is, like the 2 Israelis. I hate to say it, but a lot of Jews, we do a lot better at promoting guys like Or Sassoon than we do at Maru Tafiri.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about, is what is in our mind as the stereotype of what a Jewish person is or what a Jewish athlete is. And I think the Jewish community really has to recognize that Jews all don't look one way. Jews come from all sorts of different backgrounds, all different ethnicities and body types and tall versus short. I really there's a lot of racial diversity in the Jewish community that I think is not recognized always. And I think especially in conversations around sport and Jewish sport, uplifting those who don't necessarily look like Diego Schwartzman, I guess, for lack of a better comparison.
Well, do you feel like part of your love of Diego is that he is sort of like don't want to say archetypal, but being a 5'7" man, the fact
he's not 5'7", but yes, I think
how tall is he?
He's really like 5'4". It's the 5'7"
wow.
is a false listing.
Okay.
But I do think there is something about Diego that feels like I could have grown up with him. And there's something that like me as a New York Jew is like cheering this guy on who looks like a guy I went to high school with again, like he just seems familiar. But I think it is our responsibility in Jewish media, not just to like uplift and center the voices of those like really familiar faces. And of course it's important to cheer them on, but also like show that there is like a real diversity of Jewish athletes and Jewish athletics out there.
And we've talked about this in sports too. We've got marathoners and race walkers and Paralympians and canoeists.
Totally.
Like it's a great opportunity for, and I know it's a small community, but for us all to participate in the marketing of these non-big money sports and athletes.
And this is their like one moment. And if we can extend that moment further, it's like for the betterment of all, I believe. It gives less power to the Olympics and more power to the athletes in year-round time.
And are you born and raised in New York? You just brought that up. Is that your whole thing?
No, I don't know if it's my whole thing, but
background.
All my grandparents grew up in New York. I grew up in the suburbs. I live in New York City now. I don't foresee myself ever leaving New York. So I guess it's my whole thing.
I mean, it's funny you say that. We mentioned the Israeli baseball team earlier, and a number of the guys on that team are actually kids from Westchester who have, here's some Jewish geography. Jonathan DeMarte, grew up with my first cousin. And you get stuff like that. So it is really, a lot of these people are actually people we went to camp with. Or could have.
And Emily, we know you're not a big baseball fan, but the Israel baseball team, they're barnstorming their way around New York right now.
I think I have the least interest in baseball out of any Olympic sport, and I'm so sorry to all the baseball fans. I just cannot bring myself
that's okay.
to care or to watch.
We'll pick up your slack. Between everyone in the larger Jewish media. I think
everyone is very into baseball. I'm the only one that's like I don't care. I'm sorry. It is very exciting that Team Israel is in the baseball tournament. I'll allow that.
Well, I think we should probably wrap it up there, Emily. Thanks so much for joining us. You can find all of Emily's work at heyalma.com. Or on her Twitter page. Do you have a Twitter handle, Emily?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at mburak.
And her 18 things to know about various Jewish athletes, including playing cards, or trading cards for each athlete.
Digital trading cards.
Digital trading cards at the bottom. That maybe the next move is to turn those into an NFT, and you can get the Jewish community behind you. Except I think maybe we're too smart to fall for that scam.
Or
bad for the environment too. Yeah, they're not good.
Somehow they're bad.
I don't understand it.
I don't either. What is the blockchain?
Well,
just conceptually,
we definitely don't have time for that.
But we'll share those trading cards on our social media, and as well as post, Emily's collection of Jewish athletes to watch, so you guys could find it. Emily, before we go, is there anything you'd like our audiences to look out for from you or Alma over the next couple of weeks or months?
No, but I would love to be getting tips about Jewish athletes like you two are. So
absolutely send those Emily's way.
Maybe I'm cursing myself with that call, but
be careful what you wish for. But every email you send to us, also send to her. Why not?
Just CC me. I don't need it. Yeah. But seriously, thank you for having me on. I love
so much for coming.
Jews at the Olympics.
Yeah, and we wish you many very early mornings getting up to watch live Olympic coverage of your favorite Jewish athletes in Tokyo. It's going to be such a slog.
Oh man, the time zones.
Anyways, thanks so much for joining us.
All right, bye.
Well, thanks so much to Emily for coming on the show. Wasn't that a blast, Jamie?
Yeah, nice to talk to someone who struggles with the same issue we have of just trying to figure out who's Jewish based on like internet detective.
I really identified with her searching on Instagram, trying to find that one Jewish post of a happy Hanukkah or happy holidays. instead of Merry Christmas. I know we kind of have to go down the rabbit holes of Wikipedia. Local media is a great type, and the occasional visit to Stormfront to find out who the Nazis are identifying as Jewish.
Absolutely.
We can use that information as well. So thanks to Emily. You could find her writing at Alma, that's heyalma.com, as well as her personal social media on Twitter and Instagram at mburak. That is at EMBURACK. We're going to put the links to her Jewish Olympian profiles and some of the trading cards online on our social feeds. You can find them there as well as on hers. And an essay she wrote on Diego Schwartzman that we'll also post on our feeds for you guys to find.
Yeah. If you're not following us on Twitter, please do at Menschwarmers. You can find links to all our podcasts and writing, as well as, as many articles we can find during the week about Jews and sports. We're also going to be hosting an event online through Zoom on August 5th that's sort of promoting and talking about the Jewish sports stories that have gone on during the Olympics. That'll just sort of be towards the end of the Olympics. We're partnering with Stand With Us Canada, an organization that's devoted to ending hate against Jews.
If you'd like to see our beautiful smiling faces and hear about what's happening with the Jewish Olympians sort of as they happen at a live Q&A and a live host, we'll be there providing some insight.
Absolutely. And I think that's just part of our overall Olympic coverage. This is the last few months have all been part of it, profiling Olympians, hopefully having some more writing up on the CJN website about Olympians and Canadian Jewish Olympians and other Jewish Olympians to follow. So you can keep up to date with us at the CJN.ca, the CJN Lounge on Facebook, and again, Menschwarmers Twitter. And please like and subscribe to the podcast, review us and recommend us to any of your nieces or nephews who might have a future in sports.
Absolutely. We get a lot of love from the grandparents and the uncles and the aunts, so let's keep that love coming, and send us anything you want. We love to chat on Twitter. We love to chat anywhere. And thanks again for listening as well.